Willkommen zum SoundSO gesehen Spezial zur Frage, warum ziehen Menschen in den Krieg? Denn, wie wir alle wissen, bedeutet Krieg vor allem eins, den Tod von Menschen. Und selbst an den Überlebenden eines Krieges geht dieser nicht spurlos vorbei. Körperliche und seelische Schäden sind keine seltene Folge. Wir alle kennen den Spruch, stell dir vor, es ist Krieg und keiner geht hin. Und so schön diese Vorstellung sein mag, wir alle wissen, es gibt Menschen, die in den Krieg gehen. Aber warum ist das eigentlich so und was motiviert sie dabei? Um der Antwort auf diese Frage ein wenig näher zu kommen, habe ich mich mal mit jemandem zusammengesetzt, der als Soldat im Krieg war. Genauer gesagt im Irakkrieg. Es ist euch vermutlich nicht entgangen, dass die Folge ein bisschen länger ist als unsere normalen Folgen. Ich kann aber nur jedem empfehlen, sich die Folge ganz anzuschauen, denn wir haben das Interview extra nicht gekürzt, um euch die Möglichkeit zu geben, das ganze Bild zu sehen und die Entwicklung eines Menschen, der den Krieg erlebt hat, nachzuvollziehen. Außerdem ist das Interview auf Englisch. Deutsche Untertitel dazu gibt es über die Untertitelfunktion von YouTube. Mein Gesprächspartner Wes war im Jahr 2005 für ein Jahr als amerikanischer Soldat im Irak. Stationiert war er als Infanterist in der Nähe von Bakuba, das eine Autostunde nordöstlich von Bagdad liegt. Wie es dazu gekommen ist, wie er den Krieg erlebt hat und wie er heute darüber denkt, wird er uns nun erzählen.
I joined the infantry because I wanted to fight in Iraq.
Okay. What made you want to fight in Iraq?
I think there were a lot of reasons. But I think the main reason was I thought Iraq was a danger to my country. And I thought they had weapons of mass destruction. And I remember seeing on the news that they were hiding them and they were going to use them on us if we didn't stop them. And I think there were other underlying reasons. It seemed like a good way to get out of the small town I grew up in, to make something of myself, to prove myself, to become a man, stuff like that.
Yeah. How did your family react to your decision?
They were supportive of it. They thought it was a good thing for me. They thought it was a noble thing to do. They were scared. Some of them were afraid that something could happen to me. But overall, they were pretty receptive of it and encouraging.
Okay. Was that like the general opinion of people in America at the time?
Yeah, that pretty much everyone that I knew. There were some people that were saying it's not a good idea, but pretty much everybody I knew was saying, we need to go over there, we need to kick their asses and all that kind of stuff. And that was also kind of like why I joined, because it felt like I was being a part of something bigger than myself and defending my people and my country and freedom and those kinds of things.
Okay. So, and then how did you enlist? Like you went to an office, or what? How did it? I don't know. What was the procedure?
I remember in high school talking to the recruiters, because they send them around to come, recruit you, and I had always thought that the military was cool and was a good way to earn a living, and I was always considering it, and then finally I decided, yeah, I think that's something I want to do. So I called them up, and they came to my house, and we sat down and we talked, and they told me stories about their experiences and all the benefits and all that kind of stuff.
Were they honest?
They were fairly honest. I mean, they don't tell you about all the negative things, but they were honest about some of the positive things, like you could get some money for college and you'll get a steady paycheck, and it's really exciting and it's adventurous and stuff like that. But of course, they're not going to tell you, you know, the negative consequences, the things that could, you know, go wrong. That people, they don't tell you about people getting hurt or doing things that you regret and stuff like that. So they're not 100% honest, no.
Okay. Okay, and then did they bring the papers to sign, or were just an informational?
No, you have to go to an in-processing like place where you have to take some tests. We had to go to California, and they drove us to California, and took all the tests and everything, passed everything, and they said, hey, what do you think about, you know, being a military police or you know, cavalry or what kind of job do you want to do? And I said, yeah, I'm joining because I want to be in the infantry. I want to go fight in Iraq. And they said, oh, well, you got a pretty good score on your test. You know, you could do something better. You don't want to be a grunt, and you know, that's a shitty job. And I was like, no, that's what I want to do. I'm not going to join the army to be a pogue. We call them pogues, you know.
The military police.
The people that are other than grunts.
Ah, okay.
So we call them pogues,
and grunts are like the fighting force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just I think not everybody knows that term, but.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so how did your training? I don't know. How was your training like?
At first, it was really hard, and they kind of break you down, and then they build you up. So after they kind of crushed like how tough you thought you were, then they actually start to, you know, give you respect slowly over time and start actually teaching you how to do things. And the first couple weeks though are just like really hard.
Okay.
Actually, the first like week, you don't even get to the real training. Like you show up on a bus and it's just like a bunch of pogues that are pretending to be drill sergeants, and they're yelling at you, get off the bus, and they make you shave and dump out all your stuff, and then they just start laughing and say, oh, this is just in processing, we're just messing with you. And we were all just like, what the, you know? And then you spend like a week or two there, and you have to take a few more tests, get a haircut, and get your gear, and get your boots.
Like this.
Yeah, just like this, yeah.
You said they tried to break you. Why do you think they did that?
I think they have to, because if they want good order followers, they have to break you down first. And if they don't break you down, then you still keep a lot of your individuality. And they want to make you part of the team. They want to make you, it's kind of hard to say really, but it's a mind. I think it's kind of like a thing to do with conditioning you to do what you're told, and just to automatically do. Yeah.
Was there anything else interesting to tell about the basic training, like things you wouldn't expect to happen, or?
Most of it I pretty much expected, because I kind of had researched it, looked into some books and stuff, and I thought it would be harder. It was actually a lot easier than I was expecting.
Okay.
So that was pretty much the only thing that kind of was different than what I thought it would be like.
And was the war in Iraq did it already begin when you signed in for the military?
They still hadn't started the war yet, and I wanted to go to be in the initial invasion. So to be at the beginning.
Okay, you wanted to be.
Yeah,
like
I wanted to be the one going from the border into Iraq and fighting the Iraqi military and all that kind of stuff. And when I got to basic training, they ask you like, where do you want to go? You know, which base do you want to be stationed at? And I just wrote, like, you get a wish list. It's called a wish list. If you didn't get it in your contract, which I tried to, but they were just like, just put it on your wish list. You'll get it anyway. Then you fill out the different bases. Like, you have a few choices you can make for in the US and a few for overseas. And I just wrote, like, on every line, Iraq, 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 Iraq. I think I wrote Kuwait on one or something, just to be a smart ass, because I knew that if you got Kuwait, you're probably going to Iraq. At least I thought so. And so I got to my unit, and after I got there, they had just stopped sending people over there, the last graduates from the week before.
Okay.
So then I had to wait, another year and a half before they sent me over there. So these guys all came back from Iraq and had all these stories, and they had pictures of terrible things, and they were really mean and upset. And
do you want to go into detail on that?
I could tell you a few things. There was, like, one guy had a picture of a body missing a head, and they said they shot him with a 25 millimeter from a Bradley. And, like, I was 19, and, they were, like, coming to me and my buddies that, were just got there or hadn't been anywhere yet. And some of them were okay. Some of them were a little bit out there. They definitely did a lot of sick things and saw a lot of crazy things. And so I could tell you that much. I probably shouldn't tell you anymore.
Okay. But you didn't get any, I don't know, doubts about your plan to go to Iraq from the things they told you? Or did it make you more excited?
In a way, it kind of made me more excited. But at the same time, like, we were so busy training and doing things and working, and that you didn't really think about it in that kind of way. You don't think about it until after it's all done and you come back, and when you get back home, then you start thinking about all that kind of stuff. You don't think about, is it right or is it wrong, or do I really want to do this or do I really not want to do that? You're just thinking like you were trained to think. Just, here's the problem and this is how you react. Mm-hmm. And I don't really remember it that well because it's been a long time since I got out. I got out in 2006. It's like...
Out of the military?
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
yeah,
so
and,
8 years ago.
For a long time, I was just drinking all the time and just trying not to think about that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to go back there and in that state of mind and remember exactly how I felt and what I thought about it.
Okay. So Wes, did you ever talk to your fellow soldiers about their motivation going to war or to join the army?
My section sergeant asked us what we were fighting for. And I remember, like, some people said, I'm fighting for the attacks on 9/11, September 11th.
Yeah.
And some people said, I'm fighting for my family, for my country, for freedom. One of my friends was like, I'm fighting for the fucking government, man. So hey, you got a good point there. Yeah. We didn't really think about it that way, but yeah, I guess that's what we're doing, huh? And some people were fighting for the freedom of the Iraqis. Everybody had a different reasons for why they thought they were motivated to do what they were doing.
And you think they were honest about their reasons?
I think they were being honest, but they didn't understand really what the underlying reasons that motivated them were. I don't think they realized how certain things in society and in the news and the reports from the government, you know, had influenced them. I think that the main reason that people were joining and fighting was because they believed things that they didn't understand were lies. So that they believed propaganda, basically. And I think a lot of people in the military come from lower classes, like the poor and the lower middle class, and it's a good way to make a paycheck and to look like they're somebody special, like they're a part of something noble. And I think they really believe that the answers that they gave were what they believed, that was the truth. So I don't think they were lying. I just don't think they understood the underlying reasons, the real truth behind the matter. So I don't think they were lying or something. They were telling the truth.
And you just said that some people said they joined the army because... You said they joined the army because of 9/11. You didn't say they go to Iraq because of 9/11, because there's obviously no connection.
Well, we thought there was, because that was like what made me... I mean, all those reasons I mentioned played a factor on why I joined and why I wanted to go there. But I remember hearing that, you know, Saddam Hussein, his government, they've got weapons of mass destruction. They're not letting anybody see them. He won't get rid of them, and he's going to use them on us. And there were all kinds of things in the news and coming from the government that said that was the case. And yeah, we believed that stuff, you know. We went to the public schools and they taught us this is how you know, this is the truth, and you recite what we tell you, and that's education. It's not teaching you to think critically. So it's really easy to get duped into, you know, into believing that kind of stuff. And now I see it now, and I think it was so, the lies were so obvious. But at the time, if you would have told me that, I would have probably gotten very angry with you, you know?
Okay, yeah. Okay, and then the day came and you knew you were going to Iraq. How was that like?
Yeah, when we first found out, I felt like finally I get to do what I wanted to do. And then, like, after not very much time, I started realizing, hey, I could die. You know, it's kind of scary. I was excited, but at the same time, I was kind of nervous. And I started thinking about what would happen to my family if I died, and what if I made the wrong decision and stuff like that. But it was more excitement and more like, let's do this, let's kick some ass and kill these bastards, stuff like that.
Just tell us about your first days in Iraq and how did it went down. How did they bring you there? What was your first impression?
First we had to load up the vehicles to send them there, you know, sometime in advance, a month or so in advance. And we drove the vehicles from the port area near the ocean to the camp, and we would just get in a vehicle, drive for hours, get on a bus, go back, and just keep doing that over and over again. It was so hard because we were so tired. I remember, like, one time I was with another guy, I didn't even really know him. We just were riding in the same vehicle together, and we both fell asleep. And we both woke up, and the vehicles were driving away. We're like, oh man, come on, go. You know, we started the vehicle up and drove, and it reminded me like, you can't do that. It don't matter how tired you are, you have to stay awake, because what if somebody, you know, finds you like that? I saw all the videos on the internet of people like, you know, later on getting their heads cut off and stuff like that.
Do you mean like kidnapped soldiers?
Yeah. The first weeks we spent driving around with the guys that were about to leave the base that we were taking over the base from, and they were just telling us this route is the one that's dangerous usually, and this is the one you got to watch out for that, and this happened, and we're learning about like how it works with guard duty on the perimeter of the base and stuff like that. And it was really exciting, and I was really nervous. I remember one night we were walking around with night vision on. We got out of our vehicles, and I remember hearing like phew, phew, a couple rounds going kind of close. Like they weren't really close, but you could tell someone was like shooting at us. And I remember watching somebody jump behind a Humvee and jump behind the engine and just looking around. And one of my friends was kind of like, just like, what's going on? He wasn't really paying attention. We're like, get down here. And then we got in the vehicles and drove off, and nothing really happened. And
okay. But I guess.
But it was surreal.
As a first experience, that's still.
It was exciting. It was like the most exciting feeling I'd ever had in my life at that point. Yeah.
Like adrenaline-wise.
Yeah. It was an adrenaline rush.
Okay, so what was your first mission like?
I don't remember what was the first mission by ourselves where we were actually. I think it was just like something like route clearance, where we were driving up and down the roads, checking for IEDs, for roadside bombs. Right. So because they would send supplies with trucks, mm-hmm. and they would send them, you know, in trucks. So if they got hit by an IED, something bad would happen to them. So they would send us in Bradleys, in these big like tank-looking things.
Okay.
And we would drive up and down the roads, running over bombs, or if we saw them, stopping and calling in somebody to come blow them up or whatever, so that it wouldn't happen to the people bringing us our supplies. So
if like an IED explodes next to an Bradley, that's okay for the Bradley? It's like you don't.
Most of the time.
Oh, okay.
Most of the IEDs that hit the Bradleys, they might do a little bit of damage to the outside, but we would be like, oh, what was that? Okay.
So you experienced that, actually?
I was the only driver that I know of that didn't run over an IED the whole year. Because I was driving like, if I saw like the tiniest little dot in the road, I was going like this and like that. And all the guys in the back were throwing water bottles at me, telling me, hey man, stop driving like that, you know, because I was throwing them around in the back, and they were like hitting their heads on the walls. They had helmets, but they were still getting thrown around pretty hard. And so I never ran over any IEDs, and I never was involved in a single IED. Even the last 4 months I was riding in the back of the Bradleys, mm-hmm. or in the Humvees or whatever. Not a single one ever blew up on me, but they happened all the time to most of the people there.
So you never witnessed that live, like an IED going off?
Oh, I saw it lots of times. It just never happened on me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the vehicle in front of you, or the vehicle
the one in front or the one in back, or we saw something in the road and we stopped, and then we called in the EOD, which is Explosive Ordnance Disposal, mm-hmm. and then they would come in, and it would take them hours, and then they would come in. And I remember sometimes it was so funny because we would be like standing around, and they would blow it up, and then all of a sudden like a piece of metal would fly right by our heads, and we're like, oh shit. So, you know, we should get behind some cover. We should be careful.
Couldn't you just shoot it with the Bradley?
Sometimes we did. Sometimes it worked. One time, I don't know if I should say this. Someone we knew decided it's not a bomb, and he just went out and jumped up and down on it just to prove that it wasn't a bomb. And we're like, what the hell are you thinking? You know.
And it.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
So it was fine, but it was like, and if you were wrong, you know, that's not the right way to go about it. But the thing about it is that at times it was so tedious and repetitive and boring that you wanted something to happen just because you were bored. You just wished somebody would attack you or something exciting would happen. So sometimes people, they didn't really care. You know?
Okay. So what was your first contact with the enemy like?
There was only a few times that I really saw any like action. I think the first time I saw something, we weren't being attacked. They called us to come check out the situation because some snipers saw some guys putting bombs in the road at night, and they had shot at them. And we went there to go look for them because they ran away. And we found a guy laying in a small hut next to a fence, like a big clay, like kind of fence made out of like clay sand or something. And it was barely alive. It had bled a lot. And
so the snipers hit him?
Yeah, they had hit him. And he turned out he was an Iraqi police officer, so he was supposed to be on our side. And they were getting paid to put some bombs in the road. So the snipers shot him at night from pretty far away, and I was kind of surprised that they actually were able to hit him at night from that far away. It didn't feel real. It just felt kind of like you didn't really think about it at first. And the thing about it was there was supposed to be another guy, so we had to go find this other guy, you know, and we didn't know if he was hit or not, or if he was gonna be around and maybe fight us. So I remember like two of my friends, our medic and my battle buddy from basic training, they went and, you know, they started ripping apart his clothes and putting an IV in it, you know, to give him some fluids and stuff like that.
To save the guy.
To save the guy.
The policeman.
Yeah. And then they took us and we went clearing houses, like kicking down doors and searching people's houses and telling people to get on the floor and stuff like that. And then afterwards we didn't find the guy, so we came back and...
What did you, I mean, I don't know. How did you look for a guy you don't, did you know how he looks? Or, I mean, what were you looking for?
Oh, we didn't know. Usually when we were looking for somebody, we had a curfew, like it was like martial law. Nobody's allowed to be out past curfew, and if they're out past curfew, then if they're not on our side, if they're not the Iraqi army or the police, then they're a bad guy, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and usually we would just round up anybody that was between, you know, what they called military-aged males. So men who were between, like, you know, I don't know, 16 and 40 or something. We would just detain them, and we had a list of people that we were supposed to be looking for, and we would check and maybe bring them back to the base and let the guys that handle that shit look into it. And, you know, maybe they would go to jail or then they would get sent home. And so we didn't really know what we were looking for. We were just looking. And so then we went back to the base. We took the guy with us, and we were in the Bradleys, so we're a small little area. You know, you're like this, cramped in together, and we had to bring the guy in with us, and you know, just put him on the floor and just kind of like put our feet on top of him and drive back and take him back with us. I don't know if he lived or not. I think he lived. I think I remember hearing later that he lived. Okay. So that was like one of the first times I remember seeing like some kind of excitement. I remember another time we went to a house, somebody, I forget why, but, oh yeah, that's right. They launched like a rocket into our base, and then we fired back some rockets back at their, you know, at the area where the radar saw it come from, and just to assess the damage and see if we found anyone. We didn't find anyone. We just saw like a house with, shrapnel all in the side, and people like looking around like, what the fuck are you guys doing to us, if we didn't do anything? And so, most of the time it felt like we were just chasing a ghost, or just people were getting paid money to attack us, and they were just doing it because, hey, these assholes are in our country and we need money. So it felt like we were chasing an invisible enemy most of the time.
Well, what were your feelings towards the enemy? Because it seemed to me that you understand their motivation. Because I
didn't think about it like that until later. At the time, I thought they were all just, I don't want to. Maybe I should just say it anyways. I thought they were just ragheads. They weren't even human.
Okay.
They were just savages. And then I started to see it, and I realized we just say that kind of stuff just because it's easier to deal with having to do what we do. And but yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. I remember seeing women and children and thinking these are just people, and they're just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I remember thinking I hated these guys because they were so mean to these women. I remember seeing men with several wives, and they're sitting, on the ground with their sons in the shade, not doing anything, and the women are out plowing the fields and carrying big bays of hay and stuff on their shoulders. And I just remember thinking these are the scum of the earth, So I have mixed feelings about how I felt at that time about them. But then I also met some people who were really intelligent. They spoke English. They were nice. They were I just think they were just poor people mostly. Years of dealing with brutality. And
did you have Iraqi interpreters?
Yeah.
How was your relationship to them?
We loved those guys. Yeah, we hung out with them all the time. We always got told we weren't allowed to hang out with them. And we really liked them. And one of them was Kurdish, and the other one was I forget, Sunni or Shia. I can't remember, but we didn't really trust them though, we didn't know if we should trust them because they always told us, the guys higher than us, don't trust any Iraqis, don't trust anyone, which makes sense. But we would hang out in their rooms, and we would smoke hookah, tobacco with them, and talk shit. And
okay, so yeah, I have a question, and if you're not comfortable with answering it, we can just skip it. But did you lose friends in the war?
There weren't any casualties from fighting, so I didn't lose any friends that were killed by other people or something. I had a really good friend that ended up overdosing on drugs while we were there, and he had a lot of issues, psychological issues, from his first tour in Iraq, the time when I wanted to go, but I was a little bit too late. And he had been in trouble for doing drugs and stuff like that. And he wanted to, he didn't want to go, and they made him go anyway. And then while we were there, he took a bunch of pills, and they said that he that he just thought he was taking a certain kind of pill that you could get really high or whatever on, and that he mistook it for another pill. And I really don't know, but somehow I feel like he probably just wanted to kill himself, because I remember him being very depressed There was another guy that I didn't know. I had only met him, like seen him around. He was in a different company, and his vehicle got hit by a roadside bomb, by an IED, and he got killed. He was the first guy that we lost while we were there. And you know, just because I didn't know him doesn't mean that he wasn't, like, because it's a brotherhood, so it felt like more than just more than just an acquaintance. But luckily, none of the guys from our company were killed in this year that we were there. A really good friend of mine, his brother was killed in Fallujah while we were there. So luckily, no one that I knew, like on a real personal level, had been shot or killed by combat. So, no.
Okay. Yeah, and another question from that category, and of course you don't have to answer it. During your deployment, did you ever shoot on somebody? I mean, like, not shooting somewhere where somebody might be, but really shooting on somebody?
Yes. I don't really want to talk about it.
Okay. Should we like completely switch, or is from your reaction I see that I don't know, that it's hard for you to cope with that, or with these experiences?
I've come to accept it, and it's not so much as that I don't want to talk about it, because I can't. I mean, it's not easy to talk about, but it's more because there's other things and other people involved and other things involved, and I just don't think it's the best thing to put out in the public domain or whatever.
Okay.
It's not that I know that I was the one that shot him, because there were some other people involved, and yeah, it's something that I can't really talk too much about. I don't want to say too much about it.
Okay. Would you, or are you able to talk about your feelings towards that situation?
Yeah, I can say that I regret. I kind of was, in a way, responsible for it, because we had it's something that that has given me a lot of things to think about, and was really hard to deal with for a long time. But yeah, it's easier to deal with now, and I don't blame myself anymore. So I wish that the situation was different. I wish I wasn't so proactive in. I thought I was helping or was protecting my friends, you know, and there was some attacks on my friends in the previous days, and also in the previous weeks, and some of them were related to this incident, and it turned out to be the wrong target, and it might have just been someone on our side. So there's no way for sure of knowing exactly what happened because I wasn't there to see who it was or what had happened. They were far away, and but it's something that I had to think a lot about, and I regret it, even if I was trying to do the right thing. I still feel I did the wrong thing.
Okay, so what was it like to come home after war?
It was hard because there were a lot of mixed emotions about how to integrate back into society, and I thought that what we had done wasn't really what I thought it should have been, and it felt like some people were really proud of me or of us, and I thought there would be more that were proud of us, and I think by that time a lot of the people had changed their minds, and I thought that I don't know, the people were just, it felt almost like they were against me or against us, you know, and everywhere I went, maybe there were more people that were for us and supported what we were doing, but I always noticed people that were unhappy with us. There were lots of people I remember that were like, "We're proud of you guys." When we got back, and there was like World War II veterans waiting for us, like Korean veterans from the Korean War, and they were crying. They were like hugging us and shaking our hands, and I felt really proud. But then when I got home to my hometown, there were people that were like, "Well, what you did over there wasn't right," and stuff like that. There weren't a lot, but it felt, it showed me that it wasn't all like, you know, spectacular things. It wasn't rainbows and unicorns and parties. That there was, some people actually realized that we shouldn't have been over there, and it wasn't what I expected. It was hard to face reality, and it was hard to be normal, to be like your average citizen or civilian or whatever. I mean, how do you deal with coming back from being in a constant state of alertness and adrenaline and excitement, and to where everything's just cool and relaxed, and so there was like anger and frustration and doubts about whether or not it was the right thing to do, and I started thinking more about it, and then I started to miss being over there, and I kind of wanted to go back, and I felt like some kind of anger towards people, and I started becoming like anxious, and afraid, like walking down the street, feeling anxiety, like if I was driving somewhere, I was used to driving down the middle of the road, and if something was in the road, I had to swerve and I had to miss it, and now everything's okay, and I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, and it was hard to adjust to that.
Okay. So it was when you came back from war, it was the first time that you encountered American citizens like being critical about the war.
Yeah, it was different because before people, I mean, there was maybe one or two here and there that would say something, you know, that would make you think like, okay, whatever, you know. And then all of a sudden, like having been there and having thought about it a little bit, you could kind of understand what those few people had said before, and now there were even more saying the same things. It wasn't a lot, it wasn't even the majority of people, but it was enough to make you question your own actions.
Yeah, so like being there made you realize that they might have been right.
Yeah.
With their criticism. Okay. I'd like to go back to your initial motivation. Would you say that you can't say that there's like one thing that motivated you, but it's like a whole, I don't know, the things that surround you, the media and everything. How would you describe that?
I think that the belief, and it's kind of a society belief, like that you need someone to protect you. I think it's kind of like a fear, like an irrational fear. And I think it's kind of like a belief in authority, that you need somebody to, and I think it comes down kind of to the family. Like there are certain people in your family or your tribe that, you know, they're the alpha male, and you need them to protect you. And I think that the main motivation is wanting to be that, you know, that person or that that protector. And I think all the different things that push you in that direction to believe that are the things that we see as the motivations or the reasons why people want to join the military and be soldiers, at least in the sense of the combat soldiers. They want to be protectors and things like that. I think all the things like wanting, you know, to make money or have a chance to do something bigger than themselves, all that's important. But I think there's some kind of underlying like cause. I can't really put my finger on it. It's something that I just recently started to think about. So I think there's a main reason. I'm just not that sure exactly what it is, but there's definitely a main societal issue with just the way people perceive things and believe things. Yeah, the media says this and that and this and that, the government this and that and this and that. But I think it comes down mainly to people believing that they need that. And then certain people will want to be that because they want to please those people. You know, they want to be held in the highest esteem of those people. I remember feeling like I'm not anybody special. I'm probably never going to do anything really good with my life. I'm just going to end up working this regular slave job, you know, but not really a slave job, but working this regular job doing, you know, the same old repetitive stuff and not go anywhere or do anything. I'm never going to leave this town. And it gives you that kind of motivation to show everybody, hey, you know, I'm something else, I'm something better. And maybe that's something I can figure out more in the future.
From the things you said before, or judging from the things you said before, that didn't work out. It didn't make you feel like something better, or
for a time it did, but not so much anymore.
You told us that one of your reasons to go to Iraq was because you believed, or you were told, that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. What was it like to realize that there are no weapons of mass destruction? Was that during your deployment, or before or afterwards that this came out?
I think it wasn't really completely obvious to me, or it wasn't really spoken about in the media that much until after I came back from Iraq. But I think we pretty much knew while we were there, at least subconsciously, like, what the hell are we doing here? These people had no chances in hell of attacking us, and it was all a bunch of fucking lies. And I was mad about it, and I felt used and lied and betrayed, and it made me start to question things, whereas before it was just kind of believing everything society said and the news said and the government said, and I didn't really question too many things. I just kind of like went along with the group, with the collective, the groupthink, so to speak. And then after I realized that it was all based on lies, and that Iraq wasn't really a threat to my people, my community, or even my country, that's when I started to ask questions and start to think critically about that kind of stuff. So because I was upset about it, because I felt like we were like pawns in a chess game. Okay. You know?
Yeah. Okay, so could you sum up like the development of your mindset, like before the war, during the war, and after the war? Like how it changed you?
Yeah. Before the war, I felt it was the right thing to do. And then during the war, I started to notice that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. I wasn't sure of what was right anymore. And then after the war, as time went by, more and more, I started to realize that it was the wrong thing to do. It was the complete wrong thing to do.
Okay. So what made you decide to agree to be interviewed about that topic, which is a topic which is not easy for you to talk about? So what made you decide to talk about that?
I decided to talk about it because I think war is completely unnecessary, and I think that people should hear it from a perspective from someone who's been to war. And I hope to have an influence on on anyone who's seeing this right now or will see it, and hopefully they'll realize that it's not what it's made out to be, that war is completely immoral. And seriously, people should not fucking choose to go to war. And I wanted to let your audience know that they should look into the non-aggression principle and libertarianism, and that there's other ways of organizing society. There's much better ways than just blindly following orders.
Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.
Wes hat uns erzählt, wie er zum Soldaten wurde, wie er den Krieg erlebt hat und was dieser Krieg mit ihm gemacht hat. Natürlich lässt sich unsere Frage, warum Menschen in den Krieg ziehen, nicht umfassend durch die Erzählung von Wes beantworten. Denn letztlich handelt es sich um eine subjektive Erfahrung und die persönliche Meinung eines Menschen. Ich glaube aber schon, dass uns die Geschichte von Wes Einblicke gewährt, die wichtig sind, um zu verstehen, was es bedeutet, Soldat zu sein. Und ich bin ihm extrem dankbar, dass er den Mut hatte, seine Erlebnisse mit uns zu teilen. Was können wir aus den Erzählungen von Wes also mitnehmen? Ich glaube, man kann gut sehen, wie sehr der Krieg seine Einstellung verändert hat und wie sehr er mit dem Erlebten kämpfen muss. Und dass es dabei nicht nur ihm so geht, sondern vielen Veteranen, zeigt die hohe Obdachlosigkeitsrate unter Veteranen und nicht zuletzt auch die im Vergleich zur Durchschnittsbevölkerung fast doppelt so hohe Selbstmordrate. Man könnte jetzt dagegen einwenden, dass die Selbstmordrate unter aktiven Soldaten sogar ein bisschen geringer ist als die der Durchschnittsbevölkerung. Aber auch dafür liefern die Erzählungen von Wes einen Erklärungsansatz. Denn während seiner Ausbildung wird man dazu konditioniert oder trainiert, die eigenen Handlungen nicht zu hinterfragen, sondern auf bestimmte Situationen oder Befehle sofort zu reagieren. Der Soldat wird in einem Umfeld gehalten, in dem er keine eigenen Entscheidungen treffen muss und sich deswegen auch nicht für seine Handlungen verantwortlich fühlt. Die Reflexion über die eigenen Handlungen setzen erst dann ein, wenn man aus diesem Umfeld hinaustritt. Mit den eigenen Handlungen konfrontiert man sich also erst nach dem eigenen Dienst oder auch erst Jahre später. Insofern ist es nicht verwunderlich, dass die Selbstmordrate erst bei den Veteranen auffällig wird. Dafür, wie sehr einen das Getane belastet, scheinen zwei Faktoren eine wichtige Rolle zu spielen. Zum einen, ob man den Krieg im Nachhinein noch als gerechtfertigt empfindet. Das heißt, ob die Gründe für den Krieg Bestand hatten. Und zweitens, wie das eigene Umfeld und die Gesellschaft zum jeweiligen Krieg steht. Je stärker diese Faktoren im Vergleich zur Zeit vor dem Krieg abweichen, desto schwieriger wird es, die eigenen Handlungen weiterhin vor sich selbst zu rechtfertigen. Im Fall von Wes, also im Fall des Irakkriegs, haben sich diese Gründe als Lügen herausgestellt. Der Irak hatte keine Massenvernichtungswaffen und war auch keine Gefahr für Amerika. Ich glaube Wes aber, wenn er sagt, dass er diese Gefahr damals für real gehalten hat. Besonders verwunderlich ist das auch nicht, wenn weder das eigene Umfeld noch die Medien die Kriegsgründe kritisch hinterfragen. Dass das auch zeigt, wie wichtig eine kritische Öffentlichkeit ist, braucht man ja fast nicht mehr zu erwähnen. Ich glaube, das Gespräch mit Wes zeigt auch, dass es den einen Grund, in den Krieg zu ziehen, nicht gibt. Manche wollen in den Krieg, weil sie die Notwendigkeit sehen, ihr Land zu verteidigen oder sich zu rächen oder darin eine Möglichkeit, sich selbst zu beweisen. Für manche geht es gar nicht unbedingt um den Kriegseinsatz. Sie sehen den eher als notwendigen Teil ihres Dienstes beim Militär. Von der Angehörigkeit zum Militär versprechen sie sich einen sozialen Aufstieg, gesellschaftliches Ansehen oder das sinnstiftende Gefühl, Teil etwas Größerem zu sein. Was denkt ihr? Was bewegt Menschen, in den Krieg zu gehen? Und was nehmt ihr aus den Erzählungen von Wes mit? Könntet ihr euch selber vorstellen, in den Krieg zu gehen? Und wenn ja, unter welchen Umständen? Also, diskutiert in den Comments, aber seid fair zu Wes und bedenkt, dass es für ihn nicht leicht war, seine Geschichte mit uns zu teilen. Man mag von seinen Entscheidungen halten, was man will, und man darf sie auch kritisieren. Was ich nicht tolerieren werde, sind persönliche Angriffe auf Wes. In diesem Sinne, ich bin der Ben, das war ein SoundSO gesehen Spezial.